watching my channel. In today's video, I thought it would be fun to do a bit of a sketchbook tour. I haven't done one of these before, so I thought you guys might be interested to see what's in my sketchbooks. I usually have more than one sketchbook on the go at once. This stack here is actually the sketchbooks that I've been using for the last 2 to 3 years, and none of them are complete. They're all got at least, half a dozen pages empty at the back, because I am really bad at finishing sketchbooks before I buy a new sketchbook. Mainly because I've been sort of trying to find my ideal sketchbook. So I've sort of had to buy quite a few and test out quite a few to sort of find what works for me. And so that's why I've kind of started collecting these books, but I will eventually finish them all. And there are some that I like more than others. So I thought I'd talk about the book. So this one is a Stillman and Burn beta series. This is A5. This was the first one that I actually bought. Not the first sketchbook I ever bought, but the first decent sketchbook I ever bought. Up until this point, I'd just been using really cheap sketchbooks. And I was getting really frustrated because I wanted to use more wet media like watercolor and gouache and stuff in my sketchbooks, and the really cheap ones with the thin paper just weren't cutting it. They'd curl and the paper would get all yucky, and sometimes it would bleed through. So I thought I'd invest in some better quality sketchbooks, but I didn't know what I'd wanted, so this was the first one that I got. And as far as the water media goes, it's actually perfect. And this type of sketchbook actually ended up being my favourite sketchbook, and I think I probably will continue to buy the Stillman and Burn beta series. I've actually got a larger one that I will be showing at the end of the video. But yeah, because it has like a really nice heavyweight paper. It's a watercolour sketchbook, so it can handle watercolour, gouache, pencils, ink, pretty much anything. And if you gesso the pages, you can, use oil paint and stuff in it too. So anyway, this was the first one I bought, and most of these first drawings and things are just sketches that I do when I'm on holiday. My parents live down near the beach, and so every school holidays I tend to take the kids down there for a week or so, or a few days, and these are all sketches that I did down there. And because I don't really use my sketchbook necessarily to plan artworks for the future. I tend to just use it as a creative outlet. It's somewhere for me to sketch and draw and create when I'm not in my studio. And most of these don't end up being paintings or finished artworks. They're just sketches. So I tend to do colour studies, and for example, these are just, from life sketches of my kids, which is why they're a little bit wonky. I'm not very good at sketching from life. I can sketch really well from photographs, but sketching from life's another challenge. Anyway, so I tend to use these sketchbooks just for fun. Like I explore different ideas and some colours and some rough ideas for maybe painting series, but I don't plan out artworks in my sketchbooks, if that makes sense. So these are just some watercolour. The one on the on the right is gouache. So that's probably like one of the more refined drawings or paintings that I'll do in my sketchbooks. I'll sometimes we'll do to that level, but usually not. Usually they're just really rough. But sometimes I feel like investing a bit more time. And this size is actually really good to have in my bag. So I kind of took this with me on holiday a few times and just played around. Again, these are both gouache sketches, and as you can see, I still have just under half of the sketchbook to fill. And I liked that one. That's a good size one. Anyway, the next one I'm going to show you is the Etcher A5 Landscape Hot Pressed Paper Sketchbook. This is quoted as being the perfect sketchbook. I bought this one because I was sucked into, a lot of their internet and social media adverts, but I was actually really pleasantly surprised. This is actually a really good sketchbook, and I ended up buying some more of these in the portrait format. And so this one I kind of bought with the idea of making it filled with a few more sort of finished artworks. These are all mostly gouache. And I kind of, because it is really nice and the paper is lovely, I kind of wanted to treat it a little bit nicer. I didn't want to put, any old sort of scraggly sketches and things in this one. I kind of tried to keep it looking like, one of those fancy sketchbooks that, artist's show. So these are all mostly landscapes. They're all pretty much gouache, and this paper holds up really, really well to those wet media. I was actually really, really impressed, which is why I ended up buying more. And the size, again, is really good too. It's A5, I believe. So yeah. So these were just some sketches. I think these were based on some photos that I took when I was down in Tasmania. Again, sorry, this sketchbook, I started this in the end of 2019, I believe. Yeah, it would have been 2019. And it still has a few pages left in it, so I still haven't finished it. This piece here is actually available as a print, I think. I ended up making it into a print option for my website because I really, really liked this. The colours are really pretty. And yeah. So yeah, this is more, like I said, I kind of take a bit more care in this sketchbook. I bring this out when I feel like making something a bit more finished and a bit more completed, and, you know, taking a bit more time and effort in this one, which is a good thing because I really like the results, but it also means that I don't really use it very often because I feel a bit of pressure when it comes to this sketchbook, because I don't really want to just put anything in here, because so far, you know, all the paintings in there are actually really nice. And so this is probably like the messiest page where I did some colour mixing. I think this was actually for the Skillshare video that I have on painting landscapes in gouache. So I'll put a link to that video in the description so you can go and have a look. But some of these were demonstrations, like the one on the right, for example, that landscape, that was a demonstration for that class. So yeah, I don't really do like much messy sketches. This is like a fancy sketchbook, and yeah. So I think these were some swatches for the Liquitex acrylic gouache that I purchased, and there's a video on that as well. And yeah, just some more landscapes. Now, some of these ones were actually done back in mid-2020, and I'm only just starting to produce some bigger versions of these. So even though in the last sketchbook, the last one I was talking about, I'd say that most of these don't become finished paintings, but some of these actually did spur on a new series of paintings that I'm doing at the moment. Anyway, as you can see, this one's still half empty as well, so I've got a few pages, and it does have like a little pocket at the back that you can put scraps of paper and whatnot in. But yeah, so that's the Etcher sketchbook, and I am actually really, really happy with the quality of that one too. Now, this next sketchbook, I actually don't remember what brand it is. I know it's a mixed media journal, and there's a few companies out there that make very similar sketchbooks to this, so I'm not quite sure what it is. It's got no branding or markings or anything on it, so I have no idea. But it's called a mixed media journal or a mixed media sketchbook. But I kind of purchased it hoping that it would be okay for sort of watercolor and wet media, considering it's meant to be mixed media, but it's really not. It's anytime you try and use any kind of watercolor or watered down paints, it just bleeds through the paper. And it just, gouache isn't too bad because it's a bit thicker, but watercolor, no, it just doesn't work. So I ended up making it into more of a scrappy sketchbook. So this has got a bit of everything in it. So this is the sketchbook that I grab if I just want to flesh out an idea or practice something. For example, this is me practicing hands, or just, you know, if I've got some ideas and things I need to jot down, this is what I'll grab to use it, because you can't really do anything too nice in this. This is an oil painting that I did. So I gave the paper a coat of matte medium, and then I was able to do this oil painting on top of it because it didn't absorb into the paper. So I can use it that way, but you can see like this is like sort of watercolor media here. It doesn't work. So it's all right for, you know, pencil sketching and stuff. And if I seal the pages, I can use it for sort of gouache or oil paint or acrylic, but yeah. So this is actually a oil painting that I did on a separate piece of paper that I stuck in. So I've been sort of doing that a lot as well. So instead of painting directly on the paper, I sort of put, you know, a different paper on it. So these are, I think the one on the right is gouache and the one on the left is oil maybe, I don't remember, but this is my son. The one on the right, this one here, is like has the most likeness, so I'm actually quite happy with that one. And yeah, so this is just some studies of some artists that I like. I don't remember who that particular artist was, but you can sort of see like the where it's the wet media, it just soaks into the paper and doesn't work very well. This was a study of John William Waterhouse, and again, it dries okay, but when you're actually painting it, if you work the water too much into the paper, it ends up tearing the paper. So, and yeah, this is a gouache painting of my son again. Just a quick sort of rough study. I'm happier with the pencil drawing, a bit more so than the painting. That's Noah with Little Luna. Some more. I sort of tried to turn it into a bit more of like a scrapbook kind of art journal rather than anything too serious. It's sort of like it's the sketchbook that I grab when I want to go away or not do anything too serious. These are some pictures of my stepdaughter when we went camping recently. I think this I should say that I started this journal end of 2020, so it's sort of been going from about the end of 2020 to now. We just got some concepts and some rough composition ideas, little sketches of painting ideas that may or may not ever end up being paintings. Some more artist studies. I've got some Dorothea Sharp, who is a impressionist artist from the 50s, who did some beautiful work. These are some oil sketches. I believe I was testing out a different colour palette for skin tones, using some Viridian Green into the palette, which I hadn't used before. So just practicing. I decided sort of in lockdown last year in 2020 to start practicing and focusing on learning how to do portrait painting, which is something I used to do many years ago that I kind of stopped doing once I got involved in landscape painting. But I wanted to sort of relearn, and I also wanted to relearn how to use oils, which again was something that I was using a lot like many years ago, and I kind of stopped using them. So this sketchbook is kind of me relearning portraiture. I really like this painting on the right. This is gouache. I think it's really pretty, and I was really happy with how that turned out. So that was again a separate piece of paper. It's just some watercolor paper that I ended up sticking into this book. These are some more gouache studies. I'm just trying to learn different skin tones and how to sort of get values in the skin, but I wasn't really that successful with gouache. It wasn't until I started working a bit more with the oil that I sort of started feeling a bit more confident with it. And this is a sketch of my daughter and some sketches of her. I think that's a combination of oil pastel, maybe, I can't remember, sort of done earlier in the year. And again, this was a gouache painting of her. These skin tones ended up really muddy, but I actually still quite like this portrait. The reference photo that I was using had a lot of filters on it, so it was hard to get nice skin tones because it was quite an orangey coloured picture. So this one again is oil pastel. I actually have a video of this. This was from the Sketchbox supplies that I received, I think it was May. So you'll be able to find a video of this one on my channel. You just scoot back a little bit. This is another artist study of Claire Fletcher, who's an UK illustrator. I did a Skillshare course. I didn't make it. I listened to a Skillshare course on illustration and how to find your illustration style. And one of the classes, the project was to create an alphabet of things and then illustrate each of the words. And so I kind of started doing this, and then I lost enthusiasm. This was during the last lockdown that we had back in May. But yeah, so I kind of started, I wrote down a list of all these words to do with isolation, and my idea was to illustrate these words. And I did do a couple of them. I think I ended up illustrating maybe 5 or 6 of them. And I'll pop up the ones on here that I did do. These are all just gouache illustrations. And yeah, but I did lose enthusiasm. I kind of stopped after about the 4th or 5th one because lockdown ended and I went back to work and started doing my normal art. And so these kind of ended up not happening. But yeah, which I find that tends to happen a lot when I set myself these kind of projects where I'm like, yeah, I'll do this, I'll get that done. And then, yeah, my interest peters out and I don't end up finishing it. But I ended up using this sketchbook to sort of plan a lot of them. So a lot of these are the plans for those sketches. So there was like, you know, words like alone and family and games and Zoom calls, those sorts of things. This is again there's some oil studies of, again, my kids. That's the one on the right is my youngest and the one on the left is my oldest when he was younger. So I was actually quite happy with these. I think the skin tones and things were pretty good. These, again, some illustrations. This is the mouse that I did in the last video that I posted, which I used the July Sketchbox coloured pencils for. So that was the original sketch for that. And I think there's one more page on here. Yeah, this is like another squirrel sketch that I did that I do want to render. This is the other one that I want to render in the same way. So I want to do watercolour and colour pencils to colour in this guy, but I just haven't got around to it yet. And this is quite a big sketchbook. It has like, I think it's over 60 pages. So I still have quite a lot of pages left in this one as well. But I'm just, you know, slowly filling this one up. So this one here is another Stillman and Burn. This is actually the Zeta series, which if you can look at the Stillman and Burn website, they have, I think, 5 or 6 different series of sketchbooks, and the series just refers to the paper type. I don't remember off the top of my head what the specific paper types are depending on the series, but you can look all that up on their website. So I have decided, as I said at the beginning of the video, that Stillman and Burn sketchbooks are probably the sketchbooks I'm going to stick with from now on. This one here is I think it's the heaviest weight sketchbook that they have. So the pages are super, super thick. I think they're 300 GSM. So for a sketchbook, that's quite thick. But it works really, really well for wet media. So you can do lots of layering with watercolour, gouache, inks, and it will not bleed through and the paper will not curl. So for that kind of wet media, it was perfect. And so I bought this sketchbook. This was, again, at the start of 2020. So I've had this for just over a year now when I decided to get into painting portraits. And so this was my portrait sketchbook, essentially. So as I was mixing up skin tones and practicing. So some of it's oil and some of it's gouache. So the one on the right is gouache. I think the one on the left, I think they're actually acrylic. I'm not sure, I don't remember now. But yeah, so it's a bit of a mismatch of everything, but this sketchbook has held up really, really well to any media I throw at it. So I've been really happy with it. So there's like acrylic, there's oil painting, and there's gouache, there's watercolour, all in this sketchbook. Yeah, so I've been really happy with it. But yeah, again, I'm just exploring, practicing painting faces and drawing as well, because I needed to really hone in my drawing of the faces, because it's all very well to know how to paint the faces, but if the faces aren't accurate, then it's not really going to work. So these are practices of drawing faces, really, and some of them are more successful than others. Some of them, the sketches were really good and then I ruined it once I started colouring it in, and some of them, the sketches weren't fantastic, and so then the pictures, like the coloured in versions, ended up being a bit funny as well. But yeah, so again, this one was hard because this was I sort of started out making this a fancy sketchbook. I do have that pressure of not wanting to make bad art in the sketchbook. I don't know if that's just me or if that's a common thing, but there is definitely a lot of sketchbook pressure especially when I spend a lot of money. For example, this sketchbook was probably about $40 Australian. So when you spend a lot of money on the sketchbooks, you kind of need to, there's this pressure of like, I don't want to waste the pages. So I sort of towards the end of it started trying to loosen up a little bit more and not worry so much about what I was putting into it, because it is just a sketchbook. But yeah, that pressure is still there to produce pretty finished artworks, and I need to kind of stop myself from worrying about that. Yeah, but I don't know. I think that's a pretty common thing that a lot of artists feel when it comes to sketchbooks, especially, like, I had no intention of showing really any of these, so I didn't put pressure on myself that they had to be perfect to be shown, but I still put pressure on myself that I didn't want to waste the pages. And so even towards like the end, I actually started not even painting on the left side, and so I am now going to go back and fill in those pages, because again, it's a total waste of paper. I should be utilizing it. The paper is thick enough that I can paint on both sides. For some reason I was just not. So this is this hand study here was by I was actually copying an artist, Emily Smallwood. She does these most beautiful hands in oil, and I was trying to get the colours and the feeling of her painting in this copy and this sketch. So I think I did okay. Another portrait of my son Noah. The likeness on this isn't fantastic. I think his nose is way too big, but I think I can see improvement. I can definitely see improvement, especially based on the sketchbooks that I had earlier. This sketch here, I am really super duper mega happy with. This sketch is absolute his likeness, and it was totally done from scratch. So I drew out the portions and everything using a photo for reference, but you know, I was really happy with how that one turned out. This is a copy of an artist, I think it's John William Waterhouse again. He did a painting like this, and so this is just an artist copy. This one here was a fairly quick sketch that I did in watercolour when I was on holiday at some stage. I don't remember when. This one, trying to experiment and loosen up a little bit and not be so tight. We've got a concept sketch for a potential surreal type of artwork that I haven't got around to painting yet. But I still want to. I like this idea, and I think it would work really nicely. Some more hand sketches in, I think that's actually oil and pencil. And that's all I've done in this one so far. So there's still a few pages left, and I still want to go back and repaint on the left-hand side of a lot of those pages too. So this one is my most recent sketchbook. This is again a Stillman and Burn. This is a hardbound beta series. So this is the same as the very first one I showed you. This is just the A4 version. And so I think I have decided that from now on, this is the sketchbook that I will purchase. I purchased this one with some money that I received for my birthday from my kids. They got a gift voucher for me. So I've only been using this one since June, so I haven't got much in here, but there's some eye studies in watercolor, there is some gouache studies and paintings. But yeah, the paper in this book is really nice, and like I said at the beginning, it's really versatile, and this is just a slightly bigger size. It's, you know, double the size of the first one, so I can do larger pieces in this. And so so I took this down to the beach last time we were on holiday and did some sketches. There's some sketches of our cats, and that's my niece, Evie. That's a little portrait that I did of her based on a photo. I've got the one on the left is an attempt at a Renoir study. I realised once I started that I didn't really leave myself anywhere near enough room to do the detail that he has in his paintings, but I wanted to kind of practice capturing that dappled light and that kind of look. And then that's just a still life of some of the pots that are on my veranda. And that's all I've done so far. So as I said, this is a very new sketchbook. I've only had this for a few months, so I will continue to fill this one up as I go. So yeah, that's my sketchbook tour of all the sketchbooks that I currently have on rotation at the moment, and I will eventually fill them all, and maybe I'll come back and show you what they look like when they're finished. But thanks for visiting, and I will see you next time. Bye.